Hello, people of the internet. Welcome back to my podcast, LiberarLa, El Movimiento, the podcast that I created to inspire, empower, and liberate women around the world. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about being a multi-dimensional human being. And what I mean by that is there's so many roles that you play that all combine to make you, you. Now, I was pondering this thought when I was sitting in the waiting room, waiting for my daughter to get out of ballet class. And there I was reading, because I am an instructor at her studio, I was reading my biography that was on the wall. And for those of you who don't know me, hi, nice to meet you. My name's Alex James, or at least that's what everybody on the internet knows me as. You see, I started using Alex James as a stage name when I was only 7 years old, and it kind of just stuck. But you see, my birth given name is Katia Alexandra Vicaña Rivera, or Alex Rivera for short, or Katia, or Kat. Just pick a room and I'll tell you how I introduce myself there. So if you are just coming onto my page and have no idea who I am, the thing is I choose and pick how I introduce myself in a room. I don't always tell people that I have the following that I do. I don't always tell people about the businesses or podcasts that I have created. And at the end of the day, it is because I am a multi-dimensional human being, as I'm sure you are as well. Because in that room, as I was waiting for my daughter to get out of ballet class, all I was her mommy, waiting to pick her up. And that's all that these parents knew me as. And that's perfectly fine to me in that room. And now I bring this up because I was, as I mentioned, reading my biography on the wall, because I'm an instructor at that studio, and it says Alex Rivera. And I know a few of the parents have found my page and probably are wondering why I have chosen different names, and it is because my legal name is Rivera. James is actually my father's middle name. And so I've mentioned this in a previous episode, but using James is just a tribute to my father to still keep his name without using his actual last name. That's because he's pretty well known around the world with books that he's been featured on, businesses that he owns. I decided that I wanted to create my own name for myself. So I don't always use his last name in the rooms that I'm in. I like to use the name I created for myself, the brand that I built for myself, Alex James. But like I said, I am multidimensional, so there are times and places that I don't always introduce myself as the stage name or public figure that I am. And the reason being is it's not always relevant. Now, I know some people would have this following and would love to show everybody all the things that people comment, that people are looking at, and all the views that they get. And at the end of the day, I have to say, I have really remained very humble, and I think it's so funny when people do walk up to me and say, "Oh my God, I know you from TikTok," and I have a conversation with them. And they're like, "Wow, you're really nice. I thought you'd been stuck up or something." And I never really understand that, because quite frankly, I am the most welcoming person in any room. The only time though is when I'm with my kids. If there's a stranger approaching me with my kids, of course I'm going to be reserved. Of course, when you say, "Hey, I saw your TikTok," I'm just gonna say, "Hey, thanks." I'm not gonna go and get your follow. I'm not gonna go take a picture. I have my children and I keep my children protected. And that's the same reason I don't use my stage name at the studio we're at. My kids deserve their privacy too. And me being a public figure, sometimes, of course, they're known. But at the end of the day, I make the choice to not show their faces on my page for a reason. And that's because I was raised with a father who was quite well known. And I know what it's like to just be known as somebody's daughter, as somebody's son. And at the end of the day, using Alex James is of course a tribute to my father, Anthony James Rivera, but it is also a tribute to myself and all that I can build by myself without using his name to get me in the door. And it's kind of silly when you think about it, because, I mentioned this before, If you were able to open doors for your children, you absolutely would. But I felt like it was really, I wanted to do this for myself. I didn't want my father's name to just get me the opportunities. I wanted to prove myself, and I did, with building my following, with building my business, with everybody who networks with me knowing who I am and the things that I do. Now, with that being said, I really do key into all that I can when I'm in that present moment. I am multidimensional, and when I am in motherhood, I am in motherhood. That is it. My kids are the stars in the sky, and that is all that I am doing in that present time. But you know what? As soon as those kids are not in my care, I'm another person. And that's not to say that's not the same person. I'm just multidimensional. And whether it be in my business or whether it be in my friendships, whether it be in my dance classes, I am all of these things, and it does not change one from the other. Now, recently, I was in Danny V's music video, and it's funny because I was speaking to my father about different opportunities that have arisen where I'm like, Dad, can I send somebody to get a website made? Who's the direct line over there now? And he chuckles at me and he says, Mija, you know that you just need to start doing it by yourself. And I said, "Oi, Daddy, I know I need to be the one making these high ticket sales. I'm well aware of that. As a mother who no longer has somebody else to financially help me in my household, I am quite aware of all the opportunities I need to create to make money. And so I don't want to go back to a 9-to-5. I don't want to go back to clocking in for somebody. There is no way I am going back to selling my hours for money. That's not how I operate anymore. And so I know that it's time to key into my power, to key in to the things that people have always asked me about, to key in to the things that I've already coached people for. And it's so ironic to think that it's taken this long for me to key into my business coaching. However, I have to say, to get me to this point, I had to face my biggest fear. And you are probably thinking, what is somebody who's been a content creator since 11 years old afraid of? And the thing is, I have never been afraid to live out loud. I have never been fearful of what others might think of me. I have never been worried about what people might say of what I post, until I became a stepmom. And all of a sudden, I became very mindful of the lives that I have around me and how my popularity or my fame might affect them. And so I stayed quiet for a few years. I stopped posting for a few months. I stopped teaching while I was dealing with pregnancy and postpartum. But, like I said, we are multi-dimensional human beings. And just because there was a season in time where I was more in motherhood than it is right now, where my babies are not being breastfed and not up all night, now I feel like it is time to step into that power of coaching. The thing is, teaching has always been my superpower. I have a way of teaching that nobody else has. I am quite aware of this. In my business, I have never been afraid to fail. The thing that I have been afraid of is keeping up my success. And you see, I had to go through my worst fear to get me to this point. And so I'll speak on that. Like I mentioned, I became very quiet when I became a stepmother. And so did my page. I stopped speaking out loud. I stopped being so authentic. And it showed in my following. It showed in my comments. It showed in the connections I was making with people. And that's not how I want to live. I always vibrate on the frequency of love. I believe that love is the highest frequency that you can vibrate at, and that is where I choose to be. And though there are times that I stumble and move up and down that frequency, I know at the end of the day, I am in the frequency of love. Now, I mention this because I recently had to face my biggest fear. Now, I mentioned becoming a stepmother. And I have never been afraid of anything like I have been afraid of never seeing my stepkids again if I were not to be with their father. Now, I mentioned I had to face my biggest fear. I am to this point in my business because I have been broken in every way possible and chosen to get up and put the pieces back together. I am so aware of the community of women that are needing help right now, that are dealing with the same things I am. And it might not be through blended families. And it might not be through blended families for you or motherhood for you. But at the end of the day, I know that there's a reason you have been called to my page. I know that there's a reason that the Prime Creator is asking me to speak this to the masses. Chica, it's time to stop waiting. The time is now. You were given that vision for a reason. Why do you keep holding on to it and taking no action? What are you scared of? Now, with LiberarLa, if you didn't know how we started, I started with teaching people how to dance. And that's when I started the LLC. And my coaching quickly developed into business coaching. People asking me, how did you create that website? How do you brand this? What should I name this? How do I create an LLC? These are all things that I have learned in my own process throughout over a decade that I am able to teach you. Now, back in 2020, when I created LiberarLa, there was a lot of t-shirts that I was throwing out there with all the phrases or all the sayings that I was telling my students at that time. And there's one in particular that I felt really aligned with this podcast episode, so let me read it to you. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, y aún así la carga como si fuera tan livianita como un pluma. So, chica, the Prime Creator keeps telling me that you have a vision for a business, that you've had this idea sitting for months, years, decades even, but you have no idea where to start. You don't know how to brand it. You don't know the first thing about creating a website or different social media pages. You don't even want to be in front of a camera, let alone creating content. Chica, what did I ask you again? What are you afraid of? And building that vision, that dream of yours, it's gonna take you facing your biggest fear and breaking it, because nothing's gonna stop you. You were given your vision for a reason. Now you need to take that vision, take that dream, and make it a goal with a date. Start with something. And if you need help getting started, then I'm now taking applications on my website to coach you in business, where we go through everything from creating your name to branding to building your website and helping you start with your content creation, putting you on a schedule so that you can continue to thrive because I know with the help of a coach, you will do exponential in your vision. All you need is a hand, chica. So don't wait. Like I said, fill out the application on my website, LiberarLa.com, and we'll reach out back to you to discuss what it might look like to work one-on-one with me in coaching for building your business, because I know there's a reason you were given that vision, chica. So stop waiting. The time is now. If you enjoyed this podcast episode and you aligned with what we were talking about, then subscribe to our channel and you can join our Facebook group. It's linked in our website, LiberarLa.com. Thank you for listening. I truly appreciate all the comments, the messages, the support that you ladies have given. Sincerely, Alex James.